Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. Did the government mishandle the hanging of Afzal Guru, and has the time come to abolish the death penalty? Those are two of the key issues I shall discuss today with one of India's most learned lawyers, the legendary Fali Nariman. Mr. Nariman, let's start with the way Afzal Guru's family was informed that their mercy petition had been rejected and that Afzal Guru would be hanged. In this modern day of high-tech communication, with literally just 36 hours in hand, was the government wise to rely on speed post rather than find a more effective method of communication?
I don't know. I think our worst enemies couldn't have done it better, the way it was done. It's unfortunate. I'm sure they didn't think this out. You see, these things have to be thought out from a humanitarian aspect. You may certainly hang somebody because the president has refused his mercy plea, but at the same time, humanitarian concepts are not alien to India.
Now, the government says that they were bound by the jail manual, which specifies that intimation must be sent by letter. But that manual was written before emails, faxes, and mobile phones came into being. So do you buy that argument?
Well, you strictly comply with it, send a letter, but that doesn't prevent you from phoning. The jail manual doesn't say that you can't inform them by phone. That's the point.
Speaking to this program exactly last week, the Minister of State for Home, RPN Singh, said that the government had it confirmed by the Director General Police that the letter had been delivered before hanging. But the Chief Postmaster General of Jammu and Kashmir, John Samuel, has told the Indian Express that in fact the letter was delivered 48 hours after the hanging. Does the government have a duty to A, clarify the situation, and B, tell the people of India the truth?
I don't know. You see, the government is so detached from every government I find, unfortunately, is so detached from the wants of the people, the needs of the people, the desires of the people, that it somehow forgets all this. But you must remember that who, after all, is the government in a particular given situation? It's not the government as you define it, the Prime Minister or so on. It's some official of the government. Call him a Home Secretary, call him the Deputy Home Secretary, call him a Minister of State, some person who belongs to a particular ministry.
Or the Home Minister in this instance.
And the Home Minister, but there has to be some compassion. I'm afraid we have lost all ideas of compassion, which should be at the basis of all governance.
So this handling of the hanging of Afzal Guru shows not just lack of compassion, would you also say it shows an absence of civility?
Well, I think it's just not thinking properly, that's all. I don't know whether they meant to be uncivil. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But what I do think is that you must think these things over, decide how it is to be done, and don't give these puerile excuses about jail manuals saying that the letter should be sent. Send a letter, but at the same time put through a phone call.
So this was thoughtlessness?
Thoughtlessness, absolute recklessness, thoughtlessness.
Irresponsibility as well?
Yes, I should think so. You can use any adjective.
Now, what do you make of the fact that in 2006, when the first death warrant was issued against Afzal Guru, at that time, the magistrate consulted Afzal Guru's lawyer, a certain Mr. Pancholi, and gave 30 days in time to inform the family. This time round, barely 24 to 36 hours was given. If 30 days could be given in 2006, why can't the same time frame be given in 2013?
Of course not. I suppose some idiotic idea in the mind of some minion of government that somebody would rush to court, etc., and obtain a stay. But so what if he does obtain a stay? Very well, it can be done some other day. So there's nothing very fantastic about a particular day.
In fact, many people say that the government deliberately chose to send intimation by the slowest means possible and deliberately shortened the time frame for the execution because they wanted to ensure that Afzal Guru's family did not have an opportunity to go to the courts after receiving news that the death penalty had been rejected, that the mercy plea had been rejected.
I'm not very sure whether that would be correct. I don't think. It is sheer carelessness, thoughtlessness on the part of the authorities. You call them the government, but it's of some minion in the government after all.
Given that Rajiv Gandhi's assassins, when they got news that their mercy petition had been rejected, had time to go to the courts, and that issue has gone right back to the Supreme Court, by denying a similar opportunity to Afzal Guru's family, have they been done an injustice?
I must say your questions are remarkable. You pointed question. No, quite right. Of course they have been. I would think so. That's why I said that humanitarian approach is, I mean, transcend all constitutions and so on. You must have a humanitarian approach to all subjects.
But you're saying something very important. You're also agreeing that Afzal Guru's family have been denied, in a sense, their rights. An injustice has been done to them by preventing them the opportunity to go to court again.
Yes, of course, in other civilized systems of jurisprudence, they would get compensation. But here we don't give compensation for anything. We don't give compensation for wrongful jailing, for people, putting people in jail for months or years on end, and finally getting acquitted. Nobody pays. In Europe, they exact, the state has to pay something so if you wrongfully put someone in jail.
If this had happened in Europe or America, Afzal Guru's family would be entitled to compensation.
They would have a right of action, yes, would have a right of action, certainly. But that's our problem. You see, there are just too many of us, so people don't care in India.
Would you agree with the comment that rather than treat the hanging as a solemn legal procedure, the government has sort of treated it as a race against time to get it over with as quickly as possible and to assure that nothing comes in the way?
Yeah, possibly, but I don't think so. I think it was just recklessness, that's all. Sheer carelessness and recklessness. They hadn't thought the whole thing out, a matter of this importance. After all, we don't hang people every day, thank God.
Let me come to a second critical question. Did Afzal Guru himself, or his wife Tabassum, or his son Ghalib, all three of whom, by the way, are Indian citizens, have a right to a farewell meeting before the execution?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. Again, the humanitarian principle, leave the jail manual alone. I mean, what would anybody say? Whatever the point. And I'm sure it would be furthest to the mind of the president when he signed the warrant that they wouldn't be given all these normal, humane facilities. I'm sure he must be extraordinarily annoyed with all this. But after all, the way we function, these things cannot be made public, that's all.
The paradox is that in the late 1980s, when the situation in Punjab was as tenuous and fragile as some believe the situation in Kashmir is today, Satwant Singh and Kehar Singh's next of kin and relatives were brought to Tihar jail to meet them before they were executed. Now, if that courtesy could be extended to Indira Gandhi's assassins in the difficult times of the late 1980s, could not it have been extended to Afzal Guru in 2013?
Yes, it could, but I'll tell you an anecdote about Satwant Singh. At that time, the International Commission of Jurists sent a special message just the day before the hanging was organized to the president and requesting him for mercy. And the Secretary General, a very distinguished official of ours, Mr. McDermott, said that in Ireland, we have a saying that the grass never grows under the scaffold, meaning thereby that in the old days they used to execute them with a knife or a sword or a
like a guillotine.
Like the guillotine. So there'd be a lot of blood, and grass never grows under the scaffold. So that was. But unfortunately, the president Venkatraman had made up his mind, and he was hanged.
But you do accept that if Satwant Singh and Kehar Singh could be allowed to meet their next of kin before execution, there's no earthly reason why it could not have been possible for Afzal Guru to bid farewell to his wife and son.
You see, this sort of treatment leads to the position more in the nature of giving the abolitionists, that is those who don't want the death penalty, really more material to say that this is the way, if this is the way things are done, then let the death penalty itself be abolished.
In fact, many people turn around and say that allowing a dying man to bid farewell to his wife and son is simply a matter of human courtesy and decency. Do you think the Indian state has diminished itself by failing to live up to this minimal standard of behavior?
Yes, but not consciously. I'm sure not consciously.
But nonetheless,
that would be a legitimate inference to draw. And therefore, it's some minion of government who has to be told there's something wrong with our whole system of education, educating people in the humane aspect of life.
Twice you pinned the blame on some minion of government.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that this responsibility doesn't lie right at the top with the Home Minister himself?
No, you see, not directly, but certainly indirectly it does. I mean, it does. He has to take the knocks just as he takes the I have no
It
doubt.
also shows up the entire system as callous.
Absolutely callous. They have just not done their homework. As in many other things, they don't do their homework, which is a very unfortunate.
So regardless
Something wrong with the whole administrative setup.
So regardless of the rights and wrongs of the death penalty that was given to Afzal Guru, about which people have different views, the manner in which it was executed has embarrassed implemented has embarrassed India.
Oh, absolutely. I would be greatly embarrassed if I was in government. I wouldn't be able to answer. I mean, truthfully.
So this is a blot on our democracy as well as on our sense of justice.
Yes, yes, I think there's no doubt about it. You are absolutely right.
Let me come to a third issue. Do Afzal Guru's wife and son have a right to his body and to bury it the way they want? Or in the special circumstances of his case, would you believe that the government is justified in retaining the body and burying it in Tihar jail, as happened in 1984 with Maqbool Butt?
Yes, on that I'm not very sure, because I'm not very conversant with the jail manual. But if the jail manual...
Can I interrupt and say, the jail manual says that if there is a danger of a demonstration as a result of the body being released, the government can rightfully deny release. But on the other hand, demonstrations are constitutionally legal. The mere fact that people are demonstrating doesn't mean to say it's illegal. So that is a rule rather than a law, and it's arguable that the rule of the jail manual conflicts with the constitutional principles of the state.
But the presumption is that every rule and law is constitutional, so I wouldn't go by that.
So come back to this issue. What do you think was the right thing for the government to do?
That's a better question.
Should it release the body? It would mean now exhuming the body and releasing it, or should it say no, in the greater interest of law and order and to prevent discord, this body, like Maqbool Butt, will remain buried in Tihar jail? What would you say should be the right thing to do?
I don't know about the right thing. Perhaps the latter. I'm not very sure whether the body will remove
latter being retain it in Tihar jail.
Retain it, yes.
But you accept that this is a very difficult one.
Yes, they're very difficult, borderline sort of thing. But in any case, I would think that if there's an apprehension that this is going to be made into a big demonstration, etc. later on, and if government is truly apprehensive, then they would be perhaps justified in following the jail manual.
So in this instance, apprehension and fear is sufficient grounds to justify,
I would think so,
not releasing the body.
I would think so.
Let's take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to raise the second critical question that lies underneath this interview. Has the time come to abolish the death penalty? That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate with one of India's wisest lawyers, the legendary Fali Nariman. Mr. Nariman, let's come to the death penalty. 140 countries have either abolished it or placed it in abeyance. India is one of 21 countries which still practice it. Has the time come for India to abolish the death penalty?
Great question. In fact, judges are not agreed on this. People are not agreed on this. Presidents are not agreed on this. So it's a very, very doubtful
But what
situation.
is Fali Nariman's position?
Well, my position is that in India, it perhaps is better to leave the death penalty as it is under present conditions.
You mean rarest of rare?
Yeah, whatever that may mean. And leave that to, it may mean a bit of one judge saying it's rarest of rare, the other judge saying it's not. But let us leave it as it is, because we don't have about 3,000 executions a year as people have in other countries.
No, but the number of executions we have is actually worrying. Suhash Chakma, relying on statistics put together by the National Crimes Records Bureau, has worked out that in the last 10 years, the death penalty has been awarded, on average, once every 3 days. Now that is pretty worryingly high. It doesn't look like rarest of rare to me.
But has it been executed, like implemented?
No,
like that?
but it's been awarded once every 3 days. Doesn't that suggest that the actual awarding of the death penalty, separate to the executing...
I'll tell you, Karan, you see, I'll take the instance of judges. Because I appeared in the first case which they dealt with capital punishment. And there, I still remember that Chief Justice Sikri told the whole council that since he was Advocate General of Punjab, border state, he was always of the view that the death penalty should be retained and must be retained, because he said that if you award imprisonment, so-called imprisonment for life, which is never for life, then the man will come out and slaughter the entire village. So that was his view. And I do know that very benign, humane judges like H.R. Khanna, who was also a border judge, as it were, border state judge, took the same view.
Let me put it like this. In July 2012, that's barely 9 months ago, 14 retired Supreme Court judges and High Court judges appealed to the Supreme Court to commute 13 death sentences because in their light, these had been awarded wrongly, either in ignorance or on the basis of erroneous judgment. Right. 3 or 4 months later, in November 2012, the Supreme Court itself ruled that there was no uniform standard for the application of the rarest of rare criteria, and that this itself needed to be looked into. Doesn't that suggest that both serving and retired judges have deep concerns about the way the death penalty is awarded in India?
If by statute you can say that imprisonment for life, notwithstanding the powers of the local and the central government to commute, etc., can be and should be set aside, then perhaps you are right. Keeping them for life may be there. But you must remember, the sovereign function of every republic or every country, state, the mercy jurisdiction, the mercy plea is always open to be exercised. And courts are very reluctant to control it.
So you're saying, if you don't have life imprisonment, which means imprisonment for life.
But by law, because today, although that by judge-made law you do have, there is a bench decision of 3 judges which says so, that life means life. But in my view, that's not quite in accordance with the Indian Penal Code. It will have to be amended.
Let me interpret what you're saying. You're saying that if the death penalty is to be abolished, in your eyes, that would only be acceptable if the law is first amended to say that life imprisonment means life imprisonment for life.
Absolutely. And that the prerogative of mercy, which is also a constitutional prerogative,
is removed.
Is, yes, by some means, which it can be done if you want to do it, can be done. But it can only be under those circumstances.
And not otherwise.
And not otherwise.
And even though there are infirmities connected with the way the rarest of rare criteria is implemented.
Grave infirmities, I quite agree.
But that doesn't deter you from saying we still need a death penalty.
I beg your pardon, yes, perhaps. No, unless you have this law. If you have this law which makes sure that a person who is convicted in a rarest of rare cases to death, but in exercise of the court's function, he is sentenced only to life. He has to be in life.
I fully understand. We need a death penalty unless you have a law which says that in the rarest of rare cases, when a man is sentenced for life,
he won't come out.
It means his entire life.
There's a guarantee of the state that he won't come out.
So before you amend the law to abolish the death penalty, you have to amend the law to say that in certain cases, life imprisonment means imprisonment for life.
Yes, and don't let them fool you by saying that is the view of some of the judges. No, it has been expressed, but it has been challenged also. So this same matter is before a constitution bench.
In other words, this can't be judge laid down law. It has to be law promulgated by Parliament.
Legislative law, yes.
Legislative law.
Absolutely.
And so your advice to abolitionists is don't seek abolition of the death penalty.
Not in India.
Not in India, unless first you seek an amendment of the law by Parliament to ensure that in certain specified cases, life imprisonment means imprisonment for entire life.
And that there is no power for the state or to release him. No power at all.
Mr. Nariman, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.